And welcome back. My next guest is Dorothy Atzl from Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Welcome, Dorothy.
Hi, George.
So delighted to have you here. I've known you for very many years, and really wonderful to have you on the show. And this is really an important group that is doing a lot of work here within the community. We help sponsor a forum that we'll speak about as well with this group. But before we get into Moms Demand Action, let's talk a little bit about yourself. So maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've lived in Rockland County in New City for 27 years with my husband, Bill, and we've raised our 3 children here, who are now young adults. I have worked in and around and volunteered for numerous nonprofits in Rockland County, and I'm drawn to organizations that have a mission and are doing some good for the community.
Right.
In particular, I spent decades, I think it's actually about 20 years, in the Clarkstown School District in a variety of roles in PTA president, PTA council president, just advocating for the parents and working with the school district on a variety of different issues.
Right, and you and I got to know each other through the Family Resource Center,
Yes.
which I really did some exceptional work as well throughout the years. So you've got a tremendous record of volunteerism and accomplishment within the schools and around the schools, so I really appreciate that and thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about Moms Demand Action and how that group came to be.
Well, Moms Demand Action is a national organization which began in 2012. There was a woman in Colorado, her name's Shannon Watts, and she was a stay-at-home mom and a former communications executive. And right after the Sandy Hook shooting, she formed a Facebook group asking people, what can we do to prevent this sort of thing from happening again? And within a matter of weeks, she had thousands of people join this group. There was a real desire, a real thirst for people to get involved, find out what they could do. And since that time, it morphed into Moms Demand Action, which is a nonpartisan, issue-driven, grassroots volunteer organization that respects the Second Amendment, but works towards finding common sense solutions to gun violence in our country.
Right.
And our particular group formed a year ago in Rockland County. There's a chapter of Moms Demand Action in all 50 states, and there's over 4 million supporters right now. And our group formed last January 2018. And I have to give the credit to Sherry Moore, who is a lifelong New City resident, who formed the group, and through her leadership and dedication, tenacity, really was the glue that bonded us all together and started doing a lot of things like phone banking, canvassing neighborhoods during election season, providing community forums on gun safety, and just trying to work within the community to start a conversation about gun safety.
Yeah, which is just unbelievable. I know when you and Sherry came to meet with me and my staff last year, and we kind of went back and forth for a couple of months as to how to kind of work this forum together, and it worked out to be just a great opportunity in January. We had a full room upstairs in room 301. And I thought it was a really great panel discussion that took place, and great dialogue. Unfortunately, I had 2 events before it, so I missed part of it. But I was able to get there towards the end and be able to sit on the panel at the end. But just I think a wonderful opportunity that really shows the grassroots activism here within our community. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that panel discussion and the forum, kind of who was involved with that, and some of the issues that were discussed.
Sure. It was a great attendance. It was wonderful. And the people who attended, the community members that attended, were really engaged. They had really interesting questions and comments. I think the basis for the forum was really bringing together different organizations that have a common interest when it comes to gun safety. Even though their mission or their focus overall may be different, they found commonality in this particular forum to try and educate and inform community members about it. So we had a representative from Moms Demand Action give a Be Smart presentation, which is our public safety campaign on gun safety. And then we also had a representative from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention who was talking about the connection between teen suicide, recognizing the signs of it, and how unsecured guns can be a real issue when you have a family member grappling with that sort of issue in the home. Mm-hmm. And then the Chief of Police, Chief McCullough, and Detective Lieutenant Dietrich came and spoke about what the police department's doing for gun safety within the schools and the protocols they put in place and the training, which was of great interest to mm-hmm. the parents and the community members in the audience. And then Stan Pasco from the United Sportsmen of Rockland, I mm-hmm. believe, came and addressed hunting and gun safety in the shooting sports. So it was a well-rounded panel, and there were a lot of different questions. It was apolitical in nature, mm-hmm. and it was formed that way because we're really talking about gun safety.
Right, and one of the other things was there was the ability for people to get locks and
yes,
you know, right, and
yes. Free gun locks were provided by the Clarkstown Police Department, which was really generous.
And then the other thing that I think was really interesting, just listening to part of the forum. I mean, parents will often be told, and will have education opportunities through the schools where we'll talk about, you know, who your kids are hanging out with, mm-hmm. and know who your kids are hanging out with. And one of the things that was actually discussed at the forum is, you know, really finding out who your kids are hanging out with, and do their families have guns, and if they do, are the guns secured within the house? Could you speak a little bit to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a large part of our public safety campaign is empowering and encouraging community members to ask those questions. Because adults, inevitably all adults, are responsible for our children's safety in mm-hmm. our community. So whether you're a gun owner or a non-gun owner, it's just a good question to ask and to have that discussion. So part of the Be Smart presentation focused on how parents can ask other parents about, my child's coming to your house for a play date. Do you have a gun? And how to ask those questions and how is it secured without upsetting or alienating the other parent. You know, we always, as parents, are concerned where our kids are going, like your high schooler, it's I'm going to a party. Right. So are the parents home? You know, like those questions are pretty routine. But asking about, do you have a gun and is it secured, is not necessarily as routine. Mm-hmm. So we were just trying in this public safety campaign to, you know, like empower people to ask that question and different techniques that can be used if you're, you know, nervous about asking someone that question, such as texting or emailing, right. or, you know, just building a relationship first where you're comfortable enough to ask, or having the play date at your own home first until you get to know the other parent. There's a variety of ways right. to approach it, but it is a really important mm-hmm. topic because children, it's a very preventable tragedy mm-hmm. If a gun is secured separate from the ammunition, locked away, and where children cannot access it. Right. Things, you know, don't occur then, and you don't want to look back after a tragedy and say, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I'd locked that gun up, or I wish I knew that he knew where the gun was. So.
Right. So I know you've been up to Albany to do some advocating during this this current legislative session. Right. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and some of the upcoming events that you have.
Sure. We were just, several of us from Rockland County went up to Albany on January 16th. No, I'm sorry, January 29th. Mm-hmm. And we were in Governor Cuomo's press conference when he was announcing support for the gun violence prevention mm-hmm. package that was going before the legislature later in that day. Mm-hmm. And we were able to sit in the gallery and watch the debate, the comments, and the voting take place. So there was, I believe, 5 gun violence prevention measures passed. Mm-hmm. Expanded background checks was one of them. Illegal, making bump stocks illegal. Mm-hmm. Extreme risk protection order legislation as well. So there were a variety of things we had been advocating for. Right. Which we feel make our community safer. Mm-hmm. So we were really pleased to have that, to have a lot of our work this past year come to fruition at the up in Albany, and to actually witness the laws pass.
Right, the laws passed. The governor actually, by proposing it, signing them into law, which certainly common sense approaches. I mean, an extended background check, particularly for folks that have mental health issues. Just we want to make sure that people. It's fine. Your group isn't saying repeal the Second Amendment.
No, not at all.
But let's be smart about what we're doing to make sure that we're protecting everybody within our community.
Yeah, it's like ERPO is just trying to make sure that dangerously mentally ill people do not have access to guns.
Right.
Or someone who's at risk to harm themselves or others does not have access to a gun. It really is common sense. And the background checks, it's just waiting a little bit longer so that a thorough check can come back. Because there's been instances where there's been shootings, I believe it was in South Carolina, and there was a 3-day waiting period, and after that point, if the background check's not done, the person is allowed to purchase the gun. And in that case, he did get a gun, and he wound up killing several people in a church. Right. So things like that are really common sense, yes. That's our approach to this entire movement.
Right. So Dorothy, we're almost out of time, but
Sure.
maybe we could talk a little bit about some of your upcoming events and how
Sure.
people can get involved.
Absolutely. We have an event, first of all, we'll be at Rockland Youth Fest, which is run by and hosted by the Rockland County Youth Bureau, which is a resource fair for families at Rockland Community College Fieldhouse, and we'll have a booth on bee safety there with crafts for kids and photo opportunities. We'll be partnering with Students Demand Action on that event as well, who's a group of Rockland County high school students who are working and advocating for very much the same things that Moms Demand Action is. March 23rd, we have a really great event at Valley Cottage Library, where we're having our state elected officials, Senator Carlucci and Skoufis, and Assemblywoman Jaffe and Assemblyman Zabrowski attend on a panel discussion about current and pending gun legislation in New York State. And there'll be a question and answer period. In addition to that, we are highlighting the work of the Center for Safety and Change at that event. They've been around for 40 years in Rockland County, servicing domestic violence and sexual assault victims and providing support and for them while they go through their recovery. And we're having a donation drive for them as well, because they've been really impacted by the government shutdown. They rely a great deal on federal grants, which were cut off, so they had to furlough 50 of 60 employees and so forth. So we're very excited about having them participate with us, because gun violence is very connected to domestic abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence as well. Right. So there's a correlation there, and we really wanted to support their efforts that way. And then in April, we have a screening of a movie, a documentary rather, entitled Armor of Light, which follows an evangelical minister through this journey where he's deciding to talk about gun violence prevention with his congregation and his colleagues. And we have faith-based leaders attending that as well for a community discussion following the screening. And lastly, May 7th, we'll be up in Albany again. It's our Advocacy Day, so we'll be visiting our state elected officials to talk about current and pending gun legislation and where we go from here, gaps that need to be filled, and we're really excited about that.
Well, that's great. It really just... you guys have hit the ground running, you and Shari and the group, and I can't thank you enough for bringing the group into town hall and helping us to put together that forum, or actually you guys putting it together and us just partnering with it. Really a wonderful opportunity, and you guys are doing an awful lot of good work to help keep people safe within the community.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And again, I do want to thank you, your volunteerism and your efforts with the schools for the last over 20 years. You've had a large impact, whether you realize it or not, through those efforts, and it's very much appreciated. And certainly, I know I appreciated working with you. I was on the PTA council for a couple of years when my kids were really young at Bardoni Elementary School, and also involved as a board member for a while with the Family Resource Center, and I connected to that through you. So I want to thank you for all of your efforts throughout the future, and you're continuing it now, which is great to see.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So stay tuned. Our next guest will be U.S. Navy Korean War veteran Joe Tarangelo, coming up.